Hey everyone, it's Debbie from MadameStitch and welcome to the Granny Stitch Sampler Blanket Crochet Along. All right, folks, you've sewn all the squares together and it's time to finish off your beautiful blanket. You are so close to being done. It is time for the border, the very last piece of the puzzle. Of course, I had to choose a Granny Stitch border to finish off the blanket. I mean, it is a Granny Stitch sampler blanket after all, and the Granny Stitch is my main squeeze. However, keep in mind that you can work any border you like on your blanket if you have another type of border that suits your taste. Really, it's up to you. I love the Granny Stitch, so that's what I chose for this one. So we're going to talk about that one. All right. It is time to talk about the border, so let's put it together. So for the first round of the border, you're going to work a round of single crochet to create an even foundation for your granny stitches. I start almost every blanket border I crochet with a round of single crochet. It just creates such a nice clean edge around the blanket, and it's so easy to work the next round into. So any blanket design you find of mine will probably have a round of single crochet to start. I also do the same thing around all of my squares because I just want to make sure that I have a nice even edge to work around. All right, so for the second round of the border, you're going to start your granny stitch pattern. And it's set up along the side, the edge of the blanket by working a granny stitch. Of course, you start in the corner, but as you work along the edge, you're going to work a granny stitch and then you're going to skip 2 stitches before you work the next granny stitch, just to help with spacing. But here's a tip for this first round. You're going to work from one corner to the next corner, and you may get to the next corner and not have 2 stitches to skip. Either you've only got 1 stitch to skip, or you have more than 2 to skip. If you have 1 or 3 stitches to skip before you get to the corner, that's okay. But if you have more than 3 stitches to skip before you get to the corner, you'll need to work 1 more granny stitch in that space to fill the gap. So just make sure before you work the corner granny stitches and the corner space that you have that last granny stitch evenly spaced after the granny stitch and before the corner. You'll see what I'm talking about when you get into working it. But if you've only got to skip 1 or 3 stitches, you're still okay to do that. But anything more than 3 stitches, and you really want to stick 1 more granny stitch in there. It's kind of an imperfect science as you're working around the edge, but just follow the pattern of granny stitch, skip 2, granny stitch, skip 2, that's a mouthful. And then when you get to the corner, make a judgment call about whether you need another granny stitch or not. All right. When working the border, I didn't put any chain stitches between the granny stitches as you normally would in a traditional granny square. It just worked out that when I did try the chain spaces, it made the border too floppy and started to fan out. So I kept it more compact, and it also kept that border laying flat. I also used a larger hook, just like I did in the slip stitch seam. You'll notice that I suggest you use a size I9 or a 5.5 millimeter hook to make sure the border fits properly around the entire blanket. But again, it's not an exact science. You crochet like you do, I crochet like I do. So if you need to adjust the size of the hook or add the chain 1 spaces back in to make your blanket look the way you want it to, by all means, experiment to find the best solution for your blanket. My way isn't the only way, so you want to try to adjust yours. If you have to, hopefully you can just follow the instructions as they are. But if you need to make adjustments either in the hook size or in the chain spaces, certainly make that adjustment so your blanket looks great. So in the sample blanket, the border is limited to just 3 rounds of granny stitch. There wasn't any magic bullet here. I worked each one in a different color, and it to be honest with you, that decision was really made by the amount of yarn I had left over. I didn't wanna buy another skein of yarn. I didn't wanna have to use another color besides the 3 I was using, so I stopped after 3 rounds to make sure that I didn't run out of yarn. However, in your case, you can certainly work more or less rounds. You just repeat that last round until you're done. You can work the entire border in one color. You can add colors from your stash if you want to and just make it anything you want, but you don't have to limit yourself to just 3 rounds. If you want a bigger blanket, add rounds. If you want a smaller blanket, you can't take away too many rounds, but you certainly could take away 1 or 2 if you wanted to. All right. So with the border, your blanket is finished, and I am so excited to see all of the beautiful blankets that you make. I've enjoyed this entire process, the color choices I've seen, people working through all of the new stitches and new techniques that they've learned through the entire blanket. And with the border, we're done. So I do hope that you've enjoyed making your very own first of its own kind Granny Stitch sampler blanket. And be sure to post photos of your finished blanket in the Facebook group because we all want to share in the beautiful blankets that you've made. All right, folks, this is it. Happy crocheting.